Hello, hi, welcome back to another video continuing my journey with the Walter Scott Prize for Historical Fiction Longlist 2025. This is the 8th book out of 12 that I've read on the longlist, and this video is about The First Friend by Malcolm Knox. Firstly, I will say I'm really happy to have a copy of this. I have just checked and I can't find it on Amazon in the UK. Waterstones wasn't on there, on Audible. Just seems like you can't get it anywhere in the UK. I ordered this directly from the publisher Allen and Unwin in Australia. It took about 3 or 4 weeks to arrive, which, considering it said 5 to 6 weeks, I thought was pretty good. And I think with the conversion rate worked out to about £22. And now I've read the book, I would say it is well worth it. I will go as far, I think, as saying, it's my favourite out of the 8 I've read so far. Hands down, my favourite. I'm going to compare to last year's books because it gives you a sense of how I feel about it. So whereas The Safekeep this year reminds me of The New Life last year, it's got a really intriguing story but some beautiful language, this reminds me of Hungry Ghosts just because it's pure story. It's so enjoyable, it's funny, it's dark, really dark in some places, witty, and it's just, it's all about the story. It doesn't try to pretend to be something it's not. It's not using arty language. I wouldn't call this literary in any sense. It's not trying to use all this beautiful artistry like the Book of Days. It's just giving you a really good story, and I really loved it. So The First Friend is about two men, one who is based loosely on a real person, Lavrenti Beria, who was the governor of Georgia at the time when it was part of the USSR, and another character who's completely fictional, that of Vasil Murtov. We're given a brief introduction to their history. They were friends from childhood. I use friends loosely, but Beria's family were quite poor. His mother went to the Murtovs asking for help, and the Murtovs adopted Beria almost. But we see he wasn't quite a normal child to begin with. Didn't really have friends, bit of a loner, but he was very intelligent. Anyway, the book is mainly concerned with 1938. Beria is now in charge of Georgia for the USSR, and Stalin has said he's coming down to Georgia for a visit to commemorate the anniversary of the revolution. And so the book revolves around this visit, and we see, the backstabbing between all these top figures in the political party running Georgia. Who trusts who? No one trusts anyone. All of that going on, the scheming, the plotting, you can't trust anyone. But it's so good. I really enjoyed it. And, following Murtov's story, even though it's completely fictional, it's just, it's quite harrowing, especially as it goes on towards the end. I say it can be very dark in places. You'll laugh in other places. But yeah, it follows this visit, and it makes no mistake about the fact that Murtov is going to die. It says that right at the beginning. The first sort of prologue is into his death, but you're not given much information then. You're just given the fact he's going to die. Then all the chapters, you've got normal chapters, but they're kind of combined into, like Victorian books are, book 1, book 2, book 3. This is 40 days to live, 30 days to live, 20 days to live. So you're under no false impression that he's not going to die. He's going to die. He's going to die. And we follow this scheming, and not just scheming about Murtov, but people trying to scheme behind Beria's back as well. And you don't know who's on his side, who's not on his side. You're changing your mind as the book goes along. It's really clever. And what I love, it's so unique. The storyline is so unique. I think I mentioned in a previous video with the mayor. So, because that was also based on real events, but it was a bit more closely related. There was a bit more information about those events, so that you're kind of restricted on what you can really do with the story. You can still be creative. You can still make, you can still make fictional events happen. But with this character, Beria, there's not a lot known in it. And at the end, the author's note, it says, no one really knew anything until the files surrounding that period were released in the 90s. And then as soon as said person who is in charge of Russia now, don't want to say the name, when they came into power, they resealed all the files surrounding that era. So, we know the fact that Beria existed, and he was a bit of a murderous maniac. Other than that, not a lot is known about him. So the author has kind of had a free range to be as creative as he wants, and he has, and it just really works. It's such a really interesting, engrossing story. As I said, there's humour, there's some really dark parts as well. And what I also love, so I did a bit of reading on the author, who is Australian, and that's probably why I published in Australia. Other books I've read, so like The Book of Days and Mother Naked, they try to give you the impression you're reading something from the period they're set in with use of language. Now, the language they use isn't language that was used in the Tudor times and the medieval times, but it's the way they use it, it makes you feel as you're reading it that it could be, you know, you're reading something from that time period. Whereas here, it doesn't feel like you're reading something from 1938 Georgia or USSR. Maybe bits where they call each other friend, seems a bit sort of comrade. But other than that, it's written in the author's voice. And, you know, when you find that out, it actually works. You know, the humorous bits actually become a bit funnier, but the dark bits become a bit more sinister as well. So I love the use of the author's voice in the narration. I think that really works here. Whereas if you try to maybe use more official language, what was used back then, I don't even know what would have been. I mean, who would have known? But yeah, it really works. So I really enjoyed that as well. So that's my take on The First Friend. It's my favourite now out of the 8 books I've read. I just, really engrossed in the story, especially with Murtov's character. I really endeared to him and how he tries to protect his family at all costs. And we also see how his young daughters, his youngest daughter is affected by the communist propaganda. She calls Stalin Papa Stalin and all of that, and you can see how that jars not just Murtov but his wife Bablina as well, who probably is one of my favourite characters in the book. There's a bit of some interesting language in a scene where, so Bablina used to be a lecturer at university in English literature, and basically after the revolution they wanted to get rid of anyone who was over 40 because they didn't want people who remembered pre-revolution teaching the younger generation. So she was kind of retired, or she retired herself early. But she sends one of her daughter's teachers a book that she wants to read but hasn't read yet. And then she starts reading it and sees all this terminology, a bit racy terminology in that. It's the way that scene plays out is one of the funnier moments in the book as well. But yeah, I love her character. And the character of Beria as well is so well thought out, and you can just, the plotting, the scheming, how it affects him, how he's doing it to other people as well. It's just really brilliant. I can't say anymore. I think this is my favourite to win as it stands. I've still got 4 books to read, but it is giving me Hungry Ghost vibes, which, I predicted that would win last year, so we'll see. I've still got 4 books to read, but that's my thoughts, quick thoughts on The First Friend. Honestly, if you're thinking about reading it and you have to purchase it from the publisher in Australia, I would say do it. It's a really good read. I loved it. Anyway, next. So I've got a week before I go away. I think realistically, I'm only going to get another 1 read and a video done before I go away. But hey ho, I'm going to do Glorious Exploits. If I read that in a few days, then I'll have enough time. I'll do the 10th book, and that leaves me 2 to do before the shortlist is released in a couple of weeks. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Bye.